Welcome everyone. Greetings from Kodaikanal. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Supporting Children with Academic Challenges. The Learning Resources Department here at KIS is dedicated to enhance the quality of education for individuals with learning differences by providing appropriate strategies to make them independent learners. We support and meet the individual needs of students with dyslexia, ADHD, executive functioning, and Asperger's. I am Shweta Fernandez, a learning resources teacher at KIS, and with me here today are my colleagues Sini and Anisha. Our presenter today is Ms. Sheila Thomas. She is the HOD of the Learning Resources Department at KIS. She has been an educator for 35 years and is working in the field of special education for 20 years. She has been associated with KIS for the past 15 years and has a rich experience of working with children with diverse challenges and needs. At the end of the presentation, we will also have time for questions. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box below, and we will answer them towards the end of the session. And now, without further ado, we will turn over to our presenter, Ms. Sheila Thomas.
Thank you, Shweta. It's indeed a great honor to address such a distinguished group of parents and caregivers. The topic that is covered today is an exponentially large area, and to concise it within this limited time is unrealistic. It'll be very challenging for me to cover this so quickly, but it'll be my best endeavor to give you a broad picture to inspire us once again to take this important job of parenting. I'd also hope that it will be a jump start for us to continue to work in a collaborative manner in the days to come. Let me help you all trace back to your memories when you had some aspirations and dreams even before you held your baby in your arms. But it's interesting to know that the role of parenting is to launch them into adulthood, which means that it is a temporary job, and this job comes without prior training. So let's look at some of the crucial roles. So parenting is a temporary responsibility. Just look at this role of being a shepherd. So a shepherd, by taking care of their needs, the physical needs are met without fail. The self-esteem is met where the child is accepted as he is. The security need is met where the children feels welcome to unwind his feelings and apprehensions or failures without being judgmental, and finally helping the child to reach his potential and achieve a goal of being in a field where he can thrive as an adult. Check the role of an engineer. We don't have the power to design our child. He or she is a mosaic of the genes of their parents as well as their extended families. Trying to change the personality by designing your plan is going to have impeding effects. How about scientists? I would encourage you to become a professional in acquiring all knowledge about your child's profile. Experiment and practice trial and error methods of what works best for your child. When you're looking for facts in the internet, wear a skeptical hat and accept only reliable facts from myriad information out there. Executive, instead of playing the blame game, like blaming the school or blaming the teacher or blaming your spouse, own up your child's situation, address it, and advocate for it. I'm always amused by these bunch of students who displays unusual strength. So let's just look at what our child is capable of. So generally, what we have seen is these children are very creative and talented. If you look at this slide, you will see that in all the areas like innovations and um, discoveries, creative writing, plays, sports, engineering, all these areas, these children and people have excelled. So if you look at their strengths, they have the special ability to recognize and see intuitive patterns in understanding new concepts and ideas. They also can play with patterns and come up with lots of creativity. And just notice this, they have lots of energy, drive, curiosity, concentration when connected with personal passion. So generally parents get confused, like, why is he so much concentrated in particular thing, and when it comes to studies? So the point is they're connected with personal passion. And there are very common things that we see in this group of children. They share many traits. They have strong memory for personal experience and emotion, but not necessarily for academic rote memory. When you look at these children, whenever there is a social concern or need, we see that they are very empathetic, and they are the ones who take initiative to help those children out. Their perceptions, they have heightened perceptions. They can view things which other people don't perceive. And of course, they think out of the box. They have these neural pathways which are very different, and they can think divergently. But looking at the unusual strengths, you will see that they have some unusual challenges also. And let's see what we can do to meet these challenges. So first of all, we need to stop. We need to reflect on what your child is or isn't doing. Try to figure out why. And then look closely. Observe your child's trigger points and what setting makes him do better. And then listen. Listen to what your child tells about his struggle. Listen to their behavior as well as words, as they might not have the vocabulary to express themselves accurately. So to conclude this, that you are trying to understand your child more closely. So just look at this condition called dyslexia, a disease that you get in school. So just imagine a time when there was no reading and writing, there was no issue, there was no disorder. But now we have this term dyslexia, which is just an impairment in the brain's ability to translate written images received from the eyes into meaningful language. So it is something to do with language. So it occurs in individuals with normal vision, intelligence, and speech, but they often have difficulty interpreting spoken language and writing. So these children have normal intelligence, they are bright, they are very verbal. But when it comes to interpreting spoken language and writing, they have difficulty. And it is seen that it is carried in families. The hereditary is one of the cause. And as an example, I have stated here Jackie Stewart, the legendary car racing driver, diagnosed of dyslexia when he was 41 years of age. And both his sons have dyslexia. In fact, when their sons were being tested, that is the time when the father was called in, he was also tested. And 6 of his 9 grandchildren too are having dyslexia. So it runs in the family. And if you look at the brain function, so it is the most researched topic in the field of education. People are wondering why this bright child is not able to perform well in school. So The study in the brain function is helping us to know and understand this better. So if you look at the left brain function related to language, you will see that there is a handwriting, symbols, language, reading, following directions, phonetic, long details and facts, talking and reciting, listening, auditory association. All this is the left brain functioning. And if you look at the right brain functioning, it's more about haptic awareness. That's the spatial awareness, the spatial relationship, understanding shapes and patterns, math computation. So these children may find math difficult just because they are not able to sequence the facts or put it in long details, but they can compute the math in the brain. Then there's the color sensitivity. They are good at singing and music. The right brain has to do with creativity, visualization, feelings, and emotions. So when we look at these children, they are mostly right brain dominant. So when you look at reading, you can just see this. A non-dyslexic child, he will read table with phonetics. But a dyslexic student doesn't read phonetics. He thinks in picture. So that is one major difference that you see in the brain, how it functions. And when you look at the slide, this is a study done by this Stanford University. And if you look at the normal reader's brain, there are two areas which is being activated. But when you look at the dyslexic brain, the area behind, which is the temporal parietal area, is not at all activated. So that's the reason these child have difficulty with language. But when they get the interventions, which involve a special educational program using multisensory media, they do develop their reading skills. So a trained dyslexic reader, then he shows activation in the those parts of the brain which is critical for reading. But we have to remember that this reading that they learn is just mechanical reading. It is not automatic reading, and so they still have issues with comprehension even though they are mechanically reading the text. So this is how a dyslexic brain is working. So when you look at a child with dyslexia in the classroom, you will find that they are having lots of difficulties in the following areas. For example, remembering facts, that is the name of the people, name of things and dates, all those things which are not having an emotional connection, it is difficult for them to remember. Silent reading, taking notes while following lectures, they find it difficult to have appropriate grammar, skimming, scanning for answers, planning and organizing, writing, copying from the board, participating in the discussions, understanding verbal presentations, attending to details, making generalizations, using basic reference material, dealing in abstract terms, recall of words, test taking, and there are many more. So I just want to stop and think what amount of difficulty they have in the classroom. Okay, so when you look at this, you will understand that these children who are so bright, so intelligent, all these are processing difficulties which are not seen outside. So it is very difficult for parents and teachers and educators to understand what exactly are their challenges. Now let's look at dyscalculia. It's a condition that affects the ability to acquire math skills. And the reason is that they may have difficulty understanding simple number concepts, lack of intuitive grasp of numbers, and have problems learning number facts and procedures. So some children have difficulties in learning math. Then comes another situation which is known as ADHD. attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So this is a topic which has been around, floating around 200 years back. Earlier, people thought that children are not able to give their attention. They are not able to focus, and they are very hyperactive. And that's the reason they are not doing academically well. But after the study of the brain scanning and all, we understood that it is not actually that the child is not giving attention, but he is able to attend to a lot of things at the same time. And the reason is that he is not inhibiting all the stimulus that is around. So this is around 20 years back now that we understand that it is not attention deficit, it is that he's attending to more than one thing. And he is hyperactive because he is attending to all the impulses that is coming to him. So the brain scanning, the brain imaging has given it another name, understanding it as executive function or self-regulation disorder. So just let's look at it. If you look at this brain scan, the red portion in the front area, which is known as the prefrontal cortex, is not having activation. So this prefrontal cortex deals with attention, it deals with behavior and judgment, it deals with emotional responses. So these are all coming under executive function. So what is now understood is the children with ADHD are actually struggling because they have a lack of executive function. So as we go forward, we will understand this more. So what is the manifestation of executive function disorder? What you find is they have short-term memory problems, or the working memory is very low, and they are highly disorganized. They have an inability to plan. They find difficulty in controlling their emotions. They have difficulty in moving from one activity to another. There are time management problems. So this is all due to the function of the brain. So it is not that the child is doing this purposefully. This is all the reason behind the brain function. And always, whenever we look at a condition, we see that some children might have mild problem, or some might be having moderate, or some might be having severe difficulties. And the most interesting part that we have to watch carefully is that there is a mismatch in their ability and their performance. So when you look at the child, his ability and his performance is having a big gap. So this is where the caregivers and the educators come in role. They need to bridge this gap. We need to bring up the performance to the child's ability, matching to his ability. So what happens is generally we say that, oh, he has potential, but he's lazy, he can do, he must try harder. This child, sometimes he does work, he is able to do, but he is inconsistent. So he looks like he is so lost. So these are the comments that we generally give for these children because they are misunderstood very gravely. So just like these difficulties are not seen to other people, whenever they are perceived, they are seen as intelligent children who are not working up to their potential. So it is a hidden disability. The handicap is hidden. So just like any other handicap, we give them strategies to cope. For example, if there is a wheelchair, they need a ramp to move from one place to another. Similarly, what we are going to discuss here is how to use the ramps, how to use coping strategies to help them reach up to their potential. So if we look at children who are having difficulty in reading, even a child with attention deficit can have problems in reading. They can't focus for a long time. So technology can come as a great help. There are lots of reading softwares available now. There are speech-to-text softwares which can be downloaded, and this needs practice. So we would encourage children to use these technology to improve their reading and writing. The next way we can help these children is in selecting their courses according to their interests, their abilities, and their aptitudes. Sometimes the whole course that the child has to go through in the school, like the 5 subjects, the 5 core subjects, becomes too much. When you look at the difficulties they have in classroom, it is day-to-day challenge that they're facing. Each day they are facing these challenges. So we really have to think on how to decrease their load, how to decrease the load of reading and writing, and help them to do well in subjects that interest them, in which they are able to do, the subjects for which they have aptitudes. The next thing we can help them is to teach them some study skills. So these are the things that generally we do in our school. We teach these children lots of study skills, and there are some ways like we can help them to organize their informations. We can help them to memorize informations by using graphic organizers. This is just one of the examples. Then there are many other strategies to cope according to what the challenges are. So many of the children, they have working memory deficit. That means it is the ability to make the mental information in such a way that they are using those memory to continuously work on their task till it is completed. So to make up for this memory deficit, we can make the mental information physical, like help them to make cues and signs and sticky notes, charts and reminders, to-do list. So we have to put all the stuff outside of their brain in the visual field. So generally children, they say, no, miss, this is not necessary. I'll remember, I'll do it. But no, they really need this. We need to push this and help them to get used to this, practice this. These children, they don't have ability to analyze time. Time management is an issue because they can't see the time elapsing. The internal clock is not there for them. So then make the time physical, make the time real for them. Let them see it passing so they can, have clocks, or they can have timers, all this set up so that they can see the time passing. Let them become addicted to calendar. Let them start using calendar where they are breaking their work, they are making it into smaller chunks, giving time limit to each chunk, and in this way handle their time management problem. These children, like if you remember the slide that I had shown you earlier, that they have motivation, they have interest in the field where they are passionate about. But when it comes to subjects where they are not interested, there is no internal motivation. They are always bored. They have zero interest to do the work. So what we have to do is we have to create external motivation. So this is very important role for parents, where they can create that motivation. You can negotiate the deal. When you look at these children, they are playing video games where they don't need any internal motivation, and the reason is the video games are giving them the reinforcement. It is giving them the rewards. They have the bonus points. So it is a reason why they can continuously sit before the video games. So we need to use the same strategies, give them reinforcement, give them points, give them tokens, let them be excited in doing the work through this external motivation. So we were talking about the executive function. I want to talk to you a little more in detail about this. This executive function, which is a prefrontal cortex function, it has got a limited fuel tank for these children. So just imagine that they have difficulty in inhibition and self-restraint, which means if there is any other sensory inputs in the classroom, maybe it's a person who is moving around, or if there is another person speaking, so they cannot inhibit that sensory input, and they react to that sensory input. So what happens is they have to self-restrain themselves to behave in a way which is helping them to reach the goal of focusing in the classroom. So it takes a lot of energy from them. The next thing is to manage your time. So they don't have the internal clock, so they have to be stressed about knowing how to manage their time. So again, it takes a lot of energy from them. Self-organization, problem solving is an issue for them. So when they are in the school, they need to organize themselves, they need to problem solve. So you can see that the executive system fuel tank is decreasing every time. And then comes the emotional self-regulation. You have to regulate so much of your excitement and your boost of energy in the classroom. So again, it is something that stresses the child out. And at least not the last, but the self-motivation is another thing. The child is not motivated, and he is trying to motivate himself to learn. So what we see that, you know, by the end of the school time, the child is really, really empty of his executive functions skills. So then what do we expect when the child has to do his homework in the evening? He is already empty. So then we have to replenish the resource pool. So how do we do that? It's all very simple. It's not a big thing that we need to do, but it's very little things, you know. When you say that, okay, you're going to get a reward for this, you talk about positive emotions, relate that to positive feelings. So that is one way that the executive function pool is being replenished. You know, statements of self-efficacy and encouragement. So when they are sitting to study, you need to talk to them about, yes, you are able to do that. You will be able to finish this work. You are empowered to do that. You are equipped to do that. And things like that. Talk to them about their self-efficacy and encourage them. Since you know that these children are really spending a lot of energy to do tasks, we need to be very careful that we are looking at them whenever whenever you feel that, okay, now he is not able to focus, he's tired, he looks uninterested. Give a break. Whenever he is doing some task which is requiring more focus, be aware of that and see that he is getting some break in between. Senior students, they are able to manage this on their own. When they are tired, they take break. But for little ones, the parents need to have a watchful eye when they're doing their homework at home. And this is a very research fact that if you give them a 3 minutes break, as soon as they finish minimum 10 minutes of work or 15 minutes of work, just give them a 3 minutes break. Let them relax or do some jumping jacks or drink some water. It really replenishes their executive function. Visualizing and talking about future rewards, you know, this really encourages the child. It excites them. It motivates them to do their work and finish their work. And physical exercise has been such a effective way of increasing your executive function. It has been researched, and people have written papers on that, that physical exercise is really, really important. So as family, if you can, all be involved in some kind of a physical uh, training or some kind of games or things like that, it will be really effective for the child to improve his executive function. And when your child is doing work during the homework, when he is having assignments, I would encourage you to just take a look at one of the findings, that a child, if he is drinking glucose or sugar in sips, it is not that the child is drinking the whole drink at one go, but he's sipping the drink over the time when he is doing his work. So this hard work requires a lot of brain energy, and this glucose in sips keeps replenishing that energy, and the child is able to function better. So if you look at all these things, it means that the parent is with the child when they're doing their homework. The parent can sit in the same room, the parent can uh, do some of his own work, but the thing is that you are having a watchful eye on your child and see how he is functioning, where the child is needing support, where the child is needing some kind of an encouraging word. So the whole idea is that we are a part of the child's learning. The child knows that, okay, studying is important for my family. We all sit together, we all work together, and we all take care of each other. So this is a kind of family environment that I would like all the parents to build. Um, so uh, there is one secret that I would like to explain here, how you can get the work done from your child. So we have three major parts whenever there is a work. So the task is there, and then the response, like the child needs to finish that task. And then the consequence is there. If the task is finished, there is a reward, or if the task is not finished, there is a punishment. So this idea of having little time gap between the three parts is very, very important. That means the task and the response, there should be very little time gap between them. So as soon as the task is there for the homework, immediately the homework starts. So no time gap in between. And then as soon as the work is finished, immediately the consequence is given. So the consequence should be frequent, and it should be swift and immediate. The child should know that, yes, my parents have a deal with me that if I finish this homework, I'm going to get a star, or I'm going to get a point, or if it is a senior child, if it is a grown-up child, accordingly, what is his motivation, what is his excitement of doing a work, you set a deal for that. And see to it that whatever you promise as a consequence is met. So if the child is not doing the work, he is losing out on points. So this has been a proven way of getting the work done from our children. So most of the cases where children are forgetting to bring their work, children are forgetting to do their homework, they're not able to finish their assignments. All this is because this kind of the secret is not being followed. So I would encourage you to be a little more engaged with your child. I know there is a different dynamics between parent and child, but I would inspire you all to have a relationship with your child where they find it very comfortable to open up with you, to let you in your in his room, to make a relationship where they feel that, yes, it is exciting that I'm working along with my parent, we are having a deal together. So make the relationship between parent and child like your own creation. Think creatively how you can, first of all, come into a good relationship with your child. So as I told in the beginning, like the shepherding is a very important role. So I just would encourage all of you to get back into that mode of shepherding your child, meeting his needs, listening to the child without any judgments, and letting the child know that you love and you care and you will do anything for the child. So I I hope that uh, see if we have something to give you answers. Thank you for your interest and time.
So here in Q&A session, there was a question that if I have a dyslexic student and he or she is expected to read 1,000-word case studies in the exam, how can I support him or her? So in such case, as per the IB policy, we have the child can use text to read software. So even for the exam, the child can use that software. That is one option. And even the child can highlight the keywords for better comprehension. That will help the child to read that or better understand that passage. Over to the next question.
Some of the strengths of an ADHD adult is creativity and passion. And I think if you are passionate about what you want to do, you will put your full focus in that area. So I think these two strengths of an ADHD adult, passion and creativity, will help to be an effective teacher. Say it again. I'm sorry, I think I was still on mute. I had not unmuted my mic. The question was, can an ADHD adult be an effective teacher? The two strengths of an ADHD adult is passion and creativity. And I'm sure if you are passionate about teaching and one of your strengths being creativity, you will be a very effective teacher. There's another question here. How can teachers support ADHD students during virtual teaching? Uh, During virtual teaching, there is one thing that a teacher could do is maybe to get the attention of the child is constantly give prompts and cues. Maybe if the teacher is teaching a particular concept, in between you can stop and ask your student a few questions to know if the child was focused on the topic or the concept that is being taught.
There is a question about negotiating with the ADHD students. So here the motivation is a point, like motivate the student. This is a ramp, as I explained to you, that this is a ramp. So we need to understand that they don't have the internal motivation. And if we have to get the work done, they should be motivated. either you give them a positive extra points, just see if it works or not.
There is a question, what is an acceptable punishment if tasks are not completed? I think when Ms. Sheila was speaking, she did not really use the word punishment, but consequence. And most of our children with learning difficulties need motivation. And so rather, I would put it this way that you give a motivator to a child and motivate the child to do a particular task, and assume if the child is not doing that task, then something which the child is very fond of doing, you don't let the child do or indulge in that. It could be a sport, it could be an art, it could be anything which the child is really fond of doing. So it's something that you decide first with the child that, okay, this is something that you really like to do, and you can get to do this task only if you comply with the rules or if you do what you're supposed to be doing. So in that way, we're not talking about punishment, but we're talking about a consequence where the child does not enjoy doing, is not allowed to do something that the child likes if a particular task is not completed.
Yeah, so my guess, I would encourage you to keep contacting us with your questions as you work with your children. I'm sure you might still have more thoughts on how to deal with your child, with your particular child in particular situations. So I would encourage all of you to keep in touch. You can send mails. You can continue to um, be in touch with us. There's a question like what age or age group are symptoms visible? When it comes to ADHD and dyslexia, uh, ADHD is a thing that you can see right from the child as a toddler, or even before that, when you see that the child is restless, he is like as if he is on a motor which is on the go. So ADHD can be seen quite early, but when it comes to dyslexia, only when the child is in a situation of reading age, writing age, only then the red flag is seen. Maybe in grade 1 or grade 2. Okay, so thank you again for taking interest and attending, and let us all hope that we take some inspiration from this and continue to work with our children with more patience and with more understanding, and help them to reach up to their potential by bridging that gap that we were looking into. Thank you so much.